20 black actors that vanished and were never seen again. What if the brightest stars in Black Hollywood didn't just fade away, they were erased? We watched them dominate the screen, from the magnetic charm of Brandon Hammond to the raw intensity of Merlin Santana, only for them to vanish into thin air at the height of their powers. Was it a calculated escape from a predatory industry, or were they silenced by a system that couldn't handle their brilliance? Tonight, we're tearing back the curtain on the legends who walked away and the tragedies that forced them out. Is Hollywood a dream or a trap? Subscribe to Black Excellence Legends now and sound off in the comments. Who do you think was truly forced into the shadows? Richard Timothy Jones. Richard Timothy Jones represents one of Hollywood's most intriguing career arcs, a journey of immense promise that transitioned into a steady yet less high-profile professional reliability. Emerging in the late 1990s, Jones possessed the quintessential leading man toolkit: a commanding physical stature, a resonant voice, and an emotional range that allowed him to pivot between gritty realism and heartfelt drama. His breakout performance in the 1999 cult classic The Wood cemented him as a cornerstone of black cinema's new wave. Playing Mike, the grounded heart of a trio of friends, he showcased a relatable masculinity that resonated deeply with urban audiences. However, the narrative of him vanishing stems from the gap between his perceived potential and the roles Hollywood offered. Following a successful 6-season run on the CBS legal drama Judging Amy, where he played the charismatic Bruce Van Exel, many expected a leap into blockbuster leading roles. Instead, the industry often relegated him to supporting authority figure archetypes: policemen, military officers, or stern husbands. His memorable turn in Tyler Perry's Why Did I Get Married 2007 was a double-edged sword. While it proved his dramatic chops, it also marked the beginning of his shift away from the mainstream bankable star conversation. In reality, Jones did not disappear into thin air. He redefined success within the television landscape. As of 2026, he remains a vital fixture in the industry, most notably anchoring the hit series The Rookie as Sergeant Wade Gray. His vanishing act was actually a tactical retreat into consistency. He traded the volatile, often fickle nature of film superstardom for the longevity of procedural television. While fans of his early work may lament that he never became a global household name on par with his contemporaries, his 3-decade career serves as a masterclass in professional endurance, proving that a quiet, sustained presence is often more powerful than a fleeting moment in the sun. Misty Upham. The story of Misty Upham is a harrowing odyssey that illuminates the darkest corners of the entertainment industry and the systemic neglect of indigenous voices. A member of the Blackfeet Nation with black ancestry, Upham did not simply vanish due to a lack of talent. She was a volcanic force of nature whose career was reaching a fever pitch when tragedy struck. Her performance in the 2008 indie masterpiece Frozen River garnered an Independent Spirit Award nomination, marking her as a formidable dramatic heavyweight. By the time she shared the screen with Meryl Streep in August Osage County 2013 and appeared in Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, she was widely considered the most prominent Native American actress of her generation. However, beneath the critical acclaim lay a turbulent struggle with mental health and a deep-seated fear for her safety. Upham was a vocal advocate against sexual violence in Hollywood, and her family later suggested that her outspoken nature made her a target for intimidation. In October 2014, the rising star seemingly evaporated from her sister's apartment in Auburn, Washington. For 11 agonizing days, her whereabouts remained a mystery, while her family pleaded with local authorities for a more aggressive search, pleas that they felt were ignored due to racial bias against indigenous missing persons. The disappearance ended in heartbreak when a search party organized by her own family and friends, not the police, discovered her body at the bottom of a 150-foot ravine. While the official report labeled her death an accident resulting from a fall, the circumstances remained shrouded in controversy and grief. Her vanishing was not a career choice or a retreat into privacy. It was a violent interruption of a legacy that was supposed to redefine the representation of women of color on screen. Today, she is remembered not just as a lost actress, but as a symbol of the missing and murdered indigenous women. MMIW crisis proving that sometimes when a star vanishes, it exposes the cracks in the entire justice system. Tahir Moore. Tahir Moore's departure from the digital limelight serves as a cautionary tale regarding the immense psychological weight of modern content creation. Unlike the silver screen legends of yesteryear, Moore built his empire in the palm of millions' hands, utilizing platforms like Instagram and TikTok to transform observational wit into a brand of high-octane comedy. Known for his elastic facial expressions and an uncanny ability to satirize the mundane frustrations of office culture and domestic life, he represented a new vanguard of Black entertainers who bypassed traditional gatekeepers. By 2020, his momentum was undeniable. He was a staple of the all-def digital ecosystem and seemed destined for a transition into prestige sitcoms or stand-up specials on major streaming networks. However, the vanishing of Tahir Moore was not a dramatic scandal, but a sudden, deafening digital silence. In late 2021, the relentless stream of sketches and vlogs simply ceased. In the economy of social media, where relevance is maintained through constant presence going dark, is often perceived as a professional suicide. Fans watched as his last post became a digital monument frozen in time, while the comment sections transformed into a chaotic blend of concern, conspiracy theories, and grief. Rumors of severe burnout and a desire to reclaim a life away from the algorithm began to circulate, highlighting the exhaustion that comes with being a 24/7 performer for a global audience. By early 2026, Moore's absence remains a poignant mystery, though it reflects a growing trend of quiet quitting within the influencer sphere. While colleagues occasionally hint at his well-being, his refusal to return to the spotlight suggests a deliberate choice to prioritize mental sanity over public approval. Tahir Moore didn't lose his talent, he seemingly chose to stop giving it away for free to a digital void. His story underscores a shifting reality. In an age where everyone is constantly connected, disappearing is the ultimate luxury and perhaps the only way to truly find oneself again. He remains an echo of laughter in a timeline that moved on without him, a reminder that the person behind the screen is not a product but a human being. Lamont Bentley. The disappearance of Lamont Bentley is one of the most heartbreaking chapters in the history of 1990s urban television, marking the moment a beloved cultural fixture transitioned from a living icon into a frozen memory. Best known as the quick-witted, fiercely loyal Hakeem Campbell on the UPN flagship sitcom Moesha Bentley, was the quintessential, cool younger brother to an entire generation. His chemistry with Brandy Norwood was the engine that powered the show's relatability, making him a household name across Black America. Beyond the sitcom world, Bentley proved his dramatic mettle in films like The Wood, and by portraying Tupac Shakur in the television biopic Too Legit, the MC Hammer story, demonstrating a versatility that suggested he was destined for a long-form career in Hollywood. However, the vanishing of Lamont Bentley was not a slow fade into obscurity, but a violent, instantaneous exit that left a void in the industry. Behind the infectious smile and comedic timing, Bentley harbored a growing disillusionment with the Hollywood machine. By the early 2000s, he felt increasingly pigeonholed by his Hakeem persona and was actively seeking a path toward artistic independence through music and independent production. He was an artist at a crossroads, yearning to be seen as a serious adult actor rather than a perennial teenager. This journey toward reinvention was tragically cut short on January 19, 2005. While driving alone in Ventura County, California, Bentley's vehicle veered off a highway embankment, resulting in a fatal crash. He was only 31 years old. By 2026, Bentley's legacy is preserved in the digital amber of streaming reruns where new generations continue to discover his talent. His disappearance remains a what-if that haunts Black Hollywood. Many believe he would have followed in the footsteps of contemporaries like Anthony Anderson or Regina Hall, transitioning into the prestigious peak TV era of the 2000s. His story is a poignant reminder that sometimes the stars who seem most present in our living rooms are fighting the most complex battles for identity off camera. Lamont Bentley didn't just leave the screen. He left a blueprint for a certain kind of Black joy and vulnerability that has rarely been replicated since his untimely departure. Lorenzo Tucker. The disappearance of Lorenzo Tucker is perhaps the most profound vanishing act on this list, as it represents a deliberate withdrawal from a system that refused to see his full humanity. Known as the Black Valentino, Tucker was a titan of the race film era in the 1920s and 30s. At a time when mainstream Hollywood only allowed black actors to play subservient or buffoonish roles, Tucker was a dashing romantic lead. He starred in over a dozen films for legendary director Oscar Micheaux, including The Wages of Sin and Daughter of the Congo. His chiseled features and suave demeanor challenged the racial hierarchy of the time, proving to audiences that black men could be symbols of elegance, heroism, and sex appeal. However, Tucker's vanishing in the late 1940s was an act of quiet dignity. As the independent race film industry collapsed and Hollywood remained stagnant in its prejudices, Tucker realized that his days as a leading man were being intentionally numbered by the industry's gates. Rather than audition for the demeaning roles that were the only options left for black veterans, he simply exited the stage. He didn't issue a press release or seek a sympathy tour. Instead, he reinvented himself entirely, working as a professional photographer, a tailor, and even an assistant in a medical examiner's office. He chose the stability of a private life over the humiliation of a public caricature. By early 2026, film historians view Tucker's disappearance not as a failure, but as a victory of the self. He lived until 1986, remaining largely absent from the Hollywood retrospectives of his time, yet his silence spoke volumes about the cost of integrity. His story is a stark reminder that sometimes when an actor vanishes, they are actually protecting their soul from an industry that isn't ready for their light. Lorenzo Tucker proved that a leading man is defined by his character off screen as much as his roles on it, leaving behind a legacy that paved the way for every black leading man who followed. Calvin Lockheart. The trajectory of Calvin Lockheart represents a rare instance where vanishing from Hollywood was not a tragedy, but a masterclass in self-determination. Born in the Bahamas, Lockheart was a striking regal presence who injected the 1970s with a brand of sophisticated black masculinity that was both dangerous and alluring. He wasn't just an actor, he was a global sex symbol who successfully transitioned from the Royal Shakespeare Company in London to the gritty streets of the American blaxploitation era. His role as the charismatic, manipulative preacher in Cotton Comes to Harlem, 1970, remains a cornerstone of the genre. With his high cheekbones and hypnotic voice, Lockheart possessed a magnetic gravitas that allowed him to stand toe-to-toe with giants like Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby in Let's Do It Again. However, Lockhart's disappearance in the late 1990s was a deliberate rejection of the Hollywood machine. Despite a memorable late-career turn as the menacing drug lord King Willie in Predator II, 1990, he grew increasingly frustrated with the repetitive and often shallow scripts offered to veteran black actors. Rather than clinging to the fringes of a system that no longer challenged him, Lockheart chose to reclaim his sovereignty. He quietly packed his bags and returned to his native Nassau, Bahamas. He didn't seek the spotlight's validation. Instead, he dedicated his final decade to farming local theater and mentoring young Bahamian artists. He lived a life of quiet luxury and community service, far removed from the predatory glare of the paparazzi. By early 2026, Lockhart's legacy is viewed as a blueprint for artistic dignity. He proved that one could honor their craft without being a slave to the industry that markets it. When he passed away in 2007 from stroke complications, he died not as a forgotten star, but as a man who had successfully redefined success on his own terms. His story challenges the very definition of vanishing. To the public, he may have disappeared, but to himself, he had finally been found. Calvin Lockheart reminds us that the greatest power an artist possesses is the power to say no and walk away toward a life of peace and authenticity. Miguel A. Nunes Jr. The story of Miguel A. Nunes Jr. is a masterclass in the art of the strategic pivot. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Nunes was an inescapable force in Hollywood comedy, possessing a kinetic energy and a rubber-faced expressiveness that made him a favorite of directors like Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. Whether he was playing the terrifyingly eccentric demon in Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, or the high-strung spider in The Cult, horror comedy Return of the Living Dead, he stole every scene he occupied. However, his peak arrived in 2002 with Juwanna Mann, a film that required him to balance broad physical humor with genuine heart. He was a character actor who had successfully crossed over into leading man territory, a feat rarely achieved by specialists in quirky roles. Yet the vanishing of Miguel A. Nunes Jr. was not an exit but a transformation. As the 2010s approached, Nunes grew increasingly weary of the limited archetypes available to veteran black comedic actors. Rather than waiting for a phone call that might never come, he leveraged his industry knowledge to become a behind-the-scenes power player. He shifted his focus toward producing, directing, and executive coaching, subtly receding from the lens to master the business of the frame. While mainstream audiences wondered why they no longer saw his face on movie posters, Nunes was busy building a diverse portfolio that included independent film distribution and a successful luxury fashion venture manned by Miguel, which debuted in the early 2000s. By early 2026, Nunes represents the new retirement, a state where visibility is traded for ownership. He hasn't disappeared. He has evolved into a mogul who chooses projects based on passion rather than necessity. He occasionally pops up in television guest spots or independent features, but his primary legacy now lies in his mentorship of younger talent and his demonstration that a black actor's value isn't tied to their screen time. His disappearance from the A-list was a deliberate choice to stop being a pawn in someone else's production and start being the architect of his own. Miguel A. Nunes Jr. reminds us that the most successful actors are the ones who realize that the credits are just the beginning of the story. Garen Taylor. The disappearance of Garen Taylor from the public eye serves as a poignant reminder that reality television often captures only the briefest, most superficial chapter of a person's life. Emerging in 2007 as a standout star on BET's Baldwin Hills, Taylor was the personification of black excellence and aspirational glamour. As an affluent, stylish teenager navigating the complexities of Los Angeles high society, she possessed a poised maturity that suggested a future as a major fashion mogul or a cinematic leading lady. She was the it girl of an era, providing a rare representation of black girlhood that was defined by luxury and ambition rather than trauma. However, Taylor's vanishing act following the show's conclusion was not a failure to launch, but a courageous retreat into a private uphill battle. Unlike her contemporaries who fought to stay relevant through social media scandals or recycled reality gigs, Taylor chose a dignified silence. For years, the public wondered why she had abandoned her trajectory, unaware that she was engaged in a life-or-death struggle with lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease. She traded the artificial lights of the studio for the harsh realities of medical wards and battling a condition that disproportionately affects black women. Her choice to keep her struggle private was an act of sovereignty, refusing to let her identity be consumed by a diagnosis in the public square. Tragically, the mystery of her absence reached a devastating conclusion in early 2021, when it was announced that she had passed away at the age of 30. By early 2026, her story has been reclaimed as a catalyst for health awareness within the black community. Garen Taylor didn't just vanish. She fought an invisible war with grace and courage. Her legacy is no longer tied to the teenage drama of Baldwin Hills, but to the profound dignity she displayed in her final decade. She remains a symbol of the fragility of fame and the vital importance of seeing the human being behind the reality persona. Taylor's story is a heartbreaking testament to the fact that sometimes the most heroic roles are played far beyond the reach of the camera. Julius Carrey. The legacy of Julius Carrey is anchored by one of the most electric performances in the history of martial arts cinema, making his subsequent disappearance a source of enduring curiosity for genre enthusiasts. As the towering red-clad Shonuff, the self-proclaimed Shogun of Harlem, in the 1985 cult classic The Last Dragon, Carrey redefined the cinematic villain. He didn't just play a foil to the hero, he inhabited a larger-than-life persona that blended menacing physical prowess with a comedic, stylized arrogance. With his booming voice and the iconic catchphrase, "Am I the meanest? Am I the prettiest?" Carrey became a permanent fixture in the pantheon of black pop culture. He was a classically trained actor who understood that to play a cartoonish antagonist, one needed a foundation of immense theatrical discipline. However, the vanishing of Julius Carrey was a slow professional erosion caused by the very role that made him a legend. Following the explosive success of The Last Dragon, Carrey found himself trapped in the amber of Shonuff. Hollywood, in its lack of imagination, struggled to see past the caricature, frequently offering him roles that were either shallow iterations of his famous villain or generic, tough guy parts. Rather than descending into the bitterness often felt by typecast actors, Carrey transitioned into a reliable journeyman of television. He spent the 1990s and early 2000s popping up in everything from Murphy Brown to Boy Meets World, delivering polished performances that hinted at a range the industry rarely fully exploited. His retreat from the spotlight was a gradual move toward the stability of guest star roles, far from the chaotic demands of leading man status. By early 2026, Carrey is remembered as a master of the impact performance, an actor whose brief time in the sun left a permanent shadow. When he passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2008, at the age of 56, many fans realized they had spent years asking, "Where is he?" while he had been hiding in plain sight as a versatile character actor. He proved that an actor's greatness isn't measured by how many leading roles they secure, but by the indelible mark they leave on the collective imagination. Julius Carrey didn't just vanish, he became a myth. His story serves as a testament to the fact that while fame may fade, a truly iconic character, and the man who brought him to life, never truly disappears from the hearts of those they entertained. Merlin Santana. The disappearance of Merlin Santana is perhaps the most agonizing vanishing act in the history of Black Hollywood, as it was not a fading of talent but a violent interruption of a rising star's ascent. Born in New York City to Dominican parents, Santana possessed an effortless, magnetic charm that made him a teen heartthrob for an entire generation. While he first gained attention as Stanley on The Cosby Show, it was his role as Romeo Santana on The Steve Harvey Show, 1996 to 2002, that cemented his status as a cultural icon. With his trademark smirk, smooth delivery, and impeccable comedic timing, he represented a sophisticated and aspirational version of young Black masculinity. He was the rare actor who could transition from broad sitcom humor to genuine vulnerability, earning multiple NAACP Image Award nominations, and proving he was ready for a long-term career as a leading man. However, Santana's vanishing was an abrupt and senseless tragedy that occurred just as he was beginning to branch out into more mature, dramatic territory. In the early 2000s, he was actively working to shed his teen idol image, taking roles in films like Showtime, alongside Robert De Niro and Eddie Murphy. This promising trajectory was cut short on November 9, 2002. While sitting in a parked car in Los Angeles' Crenshaw district, Santana was shot and killed. The investigation revealed a convoluted and tragic set of circumstances involving a false accusation made by a female associate, which led to a fatal case of mistaken retribution. He was only 26 years old, a loss that sent shockwaves through the industry and left his peers and fans in a state of permanent mourning. By early 2026, Santana's absence is felt as a profound what-if in the landscape of modern entertainment. Many industry insiders believe he would have followed a path similar to Michael B. Jordan or Idris Elba, moving seamlessly between blockbuster franchises and prestige dramas. His disappearance remains a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictable dangers that can haunt even those touched by fame. Today, his legacy lives on through the digital syndication of his work, where his infectious energy continues to capture new audiences. Merlin Santana didn't leave the stage because his light dimmed. He was taken while he was still reaching his zenith, leaving behind a silhouette of potential that Hollywood has never quite been able to replace. Jason Bernard. The professional trajectory of Jason Bernard serves as a masterclass in the dignified, understated reliability of the character actor, making his eventual disappearance from the screen a quiet yet profound loss to the fabric of American television. Throughout the 1970s, 80s, and early 90s, Bernard was a cornerstone of gravitas. He didn't just play roles, he provided the moral scaffolding for every production he joined. Known for his sonorous voice and an innate air of authority, he became the industry's first choice for figures of power, judges, doctors, and high-ranking officials. Whether he was advising as an aide at NORAD in the 1983 classic War Games, or navigating the eccentricities of the afterlife, as the blind jazz musician in All of Me, Bernard possessed a unique ability to ground the most fantastical plots in reality. However, the vanishing of Jason Bernard was a subtle professional tapering that mirrored the industry's shift toward a younger, flashier demographic. By the mid-1990s, the roles for seasoned Black veterans with his specific brand of intellectual weight began to diminish. His final major contribution was a recurring role as Judge Marshall on Herman's Head, where he showcased a rare comedic timing that suggested he still had unexplored depths. Unlike the dramatic exits of his younger peers, Bernard's retreat was a dignified slide toward the end of his journey. On October 16, 1996, just as he had completed filming his role in the comedy Liar Liar, he suffered a fatal heart attack. He was 58 years old. His passing was not greeted with tabloid fanfare, but with a respectful silence from the colleagues who relied on his stability for decades. By early 2026, Jason Bernard's legacy is found in the background of nearly every classic television show, from the golden age of the sitcom and procedural drama. He remains an enigma because he lived a life largely devoid of scandal or public ego. He was a craftsman who showed up, delivered excellence, and slipped away into the night. His disappearance underscores a recurring truth about character actors. They are the invisible glue that holds cinema together, often unappreciated, until they are no longer there to steady the scene. Today, whenever a viewer encounters his authoritative presence in a rerun, they are reminded that true stardom isn't always about the spotlight. Sometimes it's about being the person everyone trusts when the lights go down. Lloyd Avery II. The disappearance of Lloyd Avery II is arguably the most chilling entry in Hollywood history, representing a total collapse of the boundary between cinematic fiction and brutal reality. Avery exploded onto the scene in 1991 with a performance that defined an entire era of urban cinema. As the unnamed red-shirted gunman in John Singleton's Boys in the Hood, he delivered the fatal shots that killed the character Ricky. His cold, haunting gaze and raw intensity in those few minutes on screen made him an instant icon of street-level menace. Critics and insiders viewed him as a natural talent who brought an irreplaceable authenticity to the screen, leading to further roles in Poetic Justice and Don't Be a Menace. However, Avery's vanishing was not a retreat, but a descent. Unlike actors who merely portrayed the hood lifestyle, Avery became increasingly consumed by the real-world environment he mimicked on film. He moved into the jungle, a notorious neighborhood in South Central Los Angeles, and traded his acting scripts for gang affiliation. The industry watched in silence as his appearances dwindled, not because of a lack of offers, but because he was literally disappearing into a life of crime. This downward spiral culminated in 1999 when Avery was arrested for a double homicide. In 2000, he was sentenced to life in prison, effectively erasing one of the most promising character actors of his generation from the public square. By early 2026, the mystery of his absence has been replaced by a grim postscript. On September 4, 2005, Avery's life ended in a manner as violent as any script he had ever acted in. He was murdered by his cellmate inside Pelican Bay State Prison. His story remains a haunting cautionary tale about the dangers of method living and the tragic lack of intervention for artists struggling with their environment. Lloyd Avery II didn't just vanish from the credits. He vanished into a cycle of systemic violence that Hollywood often profits from, but rarely attempts to solve. Today, he is remembered as a ghost of the 90s, a reminder that for some, the most dangerous role they ever play is their own life. Shawn Nelson. The professional evaporation of Shawn Nelson stands as one of the most enigmatic chapters in the annals of independent cinema. In 1994, the film world was electrified by his debut in Fresh, where Nelson portrayed a 12-year-old drug courier navigating a lethal chess game of urban survival. His performance was not merely good for a child. It was an exhibition of profound stoic emotional intelligence that rivaled the industry's greatest veterans. Critics hailed him as a prodigy, and the film's success suggested that Nelson would become the definitive face of a new intellectually rigorous wave of black cinema. He possessed a gaze that felt centuries old, capable of conveying a world of trauma and calculation without speaking a single word. However, the vanishing of Shawn Nelson was a quiet, deliberate receding from the limelight that baffled Hollywood scouts. After a handful of appearances in projects like The Secret World of Alex Mack, the high-profile offers continued to pour in, but Nelson seemingly lost interest in the industry's vanity. Unlike many child stars who spiral into public meltdowns, Nelson's exit was marked by a total lack of drama. He didn't issue a retirement statement. He simply stopped showing up to the auditions that were his for the taking. Rumors circulated for years that he had grown disillusioned with the way Hollywood commodified young black talent, leading him to seek a life where his identity wasn't defined by a lens. By early 2026, Shawn Nelson remains a ghost of the independent film movement. He has successfully maintained a shield of privacy that is nearly impossible in the digital age, with reports suggesting he pursued a career in education and community advocacy far removed from the California sun. He is the rare actor who won the game of fame by refusing to play it, leaving behind a single towering performance that continues to be studied in film schools globally. His disappearance reminds us that, for some, the greatest achievement isn't a long list of credits, but the courage to reclaim one's childhood and live a life on one's own terms. Shawn Nelson didn't lose his way. He found a different path, leaving the world to wonder what might have been while he enjoyed the peace of being who he truly is. Clifton Powell Jr. The professional trajectory of Clifton Powell Jr. provides a unique perspective on the weight of legacy and the courage required to bypass a pre-written destiny. As the son of the legendary Clifton Powell, one of the most prolific and recognizable character actors in Black Hollywood Jr., entered the world with an inherited spotlight. In the early 2000s, he made tentative steps into the industry, appearing in small roles that hinted at a natural genetic charisma. However, rather than coasting on his father's formidable reputation or struggling to escape a shadow that has loomed over urban cinema for decades, Powell Jr. performed a radical vanishing act that was actually a calculated pivot towards self-actualization. His disappearance from the audition circuits was not a sign of failure, but a declaration of independence. Powell Jr. realized early on that his passions resided in the competitive arenas of athletics and the burgeoning frontier of technology rather than the soundstage. He traded scripts for scouting reports pursuing college basketball with a fervor that suggested he sought a meritocracy where his last name couldn't assist his jump shot. Following his athletic stint, he transitioned into the tech and creative entrepreneurial space, focusing on behind-the-scenes brand development and digital storytelling. He effectively vanished from the Hollywood social scene to build a foundation that was entirely his own, refusing to be another Napo baby casualty of the industry's fickle cycle of fame. By early 2026, Clifton Powell Jr. represents a modern blueprint for the Hollywood exit. He has maintained a presence that is intentional and private, occasionally surfacing in high-profile social circles such as his publicized relationship with Sasha Obama, yet he steadfastly refuses to use his personal life as a springboard for a media career. He hasn't disappeared into obscurity. He has disappeared into success. His story is a powerful testament to the idea that leaving the family business is often the only way to truly honor one's individual potential. He remains a figure of curiosity, not for the roles he played, but for the life he chose to build, in the silence away from the cameras, proving that the most important credit one can earn is their own name forged on their own terms. Ivonne Hudson. The professional disappearance of Ivonne Hudson remains one of the most enduring enigmas in the history of late-night television. In 1980, Hudson made history by becoming one of the very first Black female cast members on Saturday Night Live (SNL). Joining during the infamous sixth season, she was a pioneer during a tumultuous transition for the show, stepping into a spotlight that was both groundbreaking and incredibly high pressure. Hudson possessed a sharp, understated comedic timing and a soulful screen presence that hinted at a long career in sketch comedy and character acting. She wasn't just a performer, she was a barrier breaker who navigated a predominantly white industry at a time when opportunities for Black women in comedy were strictly limited and often marginalized. However, Hudson's vanishing act following her departure from SNL in 1981 was so absolute that it has become legendary among television historians. Unlike her peers who used the platform to launch film careers or sitcom roles, Hudson seemed to evaporate from the entertainment industry's radar almost overnight. There were no public scandals, no farewell tours, and no "where are they now" interviews. For decades, her whereabouts in life after 30 Rockefeller Plaza remained a total mystery, leading to rampant speculation within the comedy community. She effectively became the ghost of SNL, a figure whose impact was undeniable, but whose subsequent path was hidden by a thick veil of intentional anonymity. By early 2026, the silence surrounding Ivonne Hudson has finally been interpreted for what it likely was: a dignified choice to live a life on her own terms, far removed from the predatory cycle of celebrity culture. While occasional reports suggest she relocated to the East Coast to focus on community-based work and family, she has never sought to monetize her historical status or revisit her time in the limelight. Her disappearance underscores a powerful reality that for some, the greatest act of rebellion against an industry that often commodifies talent is to simply walk away and never look back. Ivonne Hudson remains a vital part of television history, not for the fame she kept, but for the privacy she successfully reclaimed, proving that a person's legacy isn't defined by how long they stay under the lights, but by the peace they find when they turn them off. Sheldon Turnipseed. The total disappearance of Sheldon Turnipseed from the global entertainment radar is a fascinating study in the rejection of child stardom in favor of intellectual pursuit. To a specific generation of 1990s viewers, Turnipseed was the face of curiosity and academic excellence, playing Jamal Jenkins on the groundbreaking PBS series Ghostwriter. From 1992 to 1995, he led a diverse ensemble of teenagers solving mysteries through literacy and deduction. Turnipseed was a standout, possessing a calm, natural screen presence and a sharp delivery that made him a role model for young Black students across America. He didn't just play a smart kid, he made intelligence feel cool, accessible, and essential. However, the vanishing of Sheldon Turnipseed was not caused by a lack of opportunity or a tragic fall from grace. Instead, it was a deliberate, silent transition into the very world of higher education his character advocated for. Following the conclusion of Ghostwriter, Turnipseed made a choice that is rare for successful child actors. He walked away from the camera entirely. He didn't chase the transition to adult roles or settle for reality television. Instead, he pursued a rigorous academic path, eventually graduating from New York University NYU in 2002. He chose to trade the fleeting fame of the screen for the lasting impact of a private, professional life, effectively severing ties with the public eye. By early 2026, Sheldon Turnipseed has become a symbol of the healthy exit from Hollywood. He has successfully maintained such a high level of privacy that he remains one of the few stars from the 90s with virtually no digital footprint in the entertainment space. While fans of the series still celebrate his work in syndication, Turnipseed himself has lived several lifetimes away from the limelight, reportedly building a career in corporate logistics and professional consulting. His story reminds us that vanishing can be the ultimate form of success, a proof that one can be touched by the magic of fame and still choose the quiet, meaningful reality of an ordinary life. He remains a beloved ghost of 90s nostalgia, leaving behind a legacy of literacy and leaving the world to wonder about the brilliant man he became in the shadows. Orlando Jones. The professional trajectory of Orlando Jones is a compelling study of what happens when an actor's intellectual curiosity and uncompromising integrity collide with the rigid expectations of the Hollywood machine. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Jones was a ubiquitous presence, a comedic powerhouse who parlayed a series of high-energy 7-Up commercials into a formidable film career. With a background in writing for series like A Different World, he brought a sharp meta-textual wit to blockbusters like Evolution and The Replacements. He was the rare talent who could oscillate between broad physical comedy and the cerebral intensity required for projects like American Gods, where his portrayal of Mr. Nancy became a cultural lightning rod for its raw, unfiltered commentary on racial injustice. However, the vanishing of Orlando Jones from the mainstream spotlight was not a fading of ability, but a consequence of speaking truth to power. Following his highly publicized and controversial firing from American Gods in 2019, a move he attributed to the showrunner's discomfort with his character's angry and pro-Black message, Jones experienced a significant cooling of offers from major studios. Rather than bending to fit a more palatable industry mold, Jones performed a strategic retreat into the digital and independent frontier. He effectively disappeared from the red carpet circuit to focus on transmedia, storytelling, fan culture advocacy, and leveraging blockchain technology to empower creators. He chose to trade the role of a hired gun actor for that of a disruptive creative architect. By early 2026, Orlando Jones has redefined the concept of the missing actor. He hasn't vanished into obscurity, he has vanished into the future of entertainment. He has become a leading voice in the creator economy, utilizing decentralized platforms to speak directly to his audience without the filter of corporate gatekeepers. While fans of his early comedies may wonder why he isn't headlining the latest summer tentpole, Jones is busy building a legacy rooted in ownership and intellectual freedom. His story is a powerful reminder that in the modern era, the most visible place to be isn't always on a movie poster. It's in the driver's seat of your own narrative. Orlando Jones didn't lose the game. He simply realized the board was rigged and started his own. Sly Stone. The disappearance of Sly Stone represents the most psychedelic and perplexing vanishing act in the history of global music and film. As the visionary architect behind Sly and the Family Stone, he wasn't just a performer. He was a cultural earthquake who integrated funk, soul, and rock while preaching a gospel of racial harmony and cosmic inclusion. His presence in the 1969 Woodstock documentary defined the summer of love, making him a cinematic deity of the counterculture. Stone possessed a kinetic technicolor charisma that suggested he was the rightful heir to a throne occupied by legends. He was a multi-instrumentalist whose sonic innovations laid the foundation for everything from Prince to hip-hop. However, the vanishing of Sly Stone was a slow, agonizing descent into reclusiveness and legal turmoil. By the late 1970s, the utopian dreams of the 60s had curdled, and Stone's career became a fragmented mosaic of missed concerts, erratic behavior, and substance abuse struggles. He essentially disappeared from the global stage, receding into a nomadic existence that fueled decades of urban legends. For a long time, the public perception was that he had vanished into the shadows of Los Angeles, living in a camper van, despite having generated millions in royalties, a narrative of a fallen king that gripped the media's imagination. His absence was a deafening silence in an industry that desperately needed his genius. By early 2026, the enigma of Sly Stone reached its final reflective chapter. After years of litigation to reclaim his stolen royalties and a brief late-career resurfacing through his 2023 memoir, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, Stone passed away in late 2025 at the age of 82. His vanishing is now understood not as a tragedy of failure, but as a complicated withdrawal from a world he no longer recognized. He spent his final years in a quiet, protected peace, finally having won the legal battles for his legacy. He remains a ghost of a brighter future, a reminder that the brightest stars often burn out because the atmosphere isn't pure enough to sustain them. Sly Stone didn't just leave the spotlight. He became the light that continues to guide every artist seeking the everyday people. Dave Chappelle. The disappearance of Dave Chappelle is the most legendary vanishing act in modern pop culture, a $50 million disappearing trick that fundamentally changed the power dynamic between artists and corporations. In 2005, Chappelle was the undisputed king of comedy. Chappelle's show was a cultural supernova redefining satire and race relations for the millennial generation. He possessed a supernatural ability to pinpoint the absurdities of American life, making him both a critical darling and a commercial titan. However, at the absolute zenith of his fame while filming the third season of his hit show, Chappelle famously walked away from a massive contract and flew to South Africa. His vanishing was not a result of a mental breakdown, as the media at the time cruelly speculated, but a radical act of self-preservation. Chappelle realized that the machine surrounding his talent was beginning to compromise his artistic integrity and mental health. He saw his work being co-opted and misunderstood by the very people he was satirizing. By disappearing for nearly a decade, Chappelle performed a social strike. He traded the overwhelming noise of Hollywood for the quiet hills of Yellow Springs, Ohio, focusing on his family and honing his craft in private, smoke-filled rooms and comedy clubs far from the paparazzi. He effectively killed the brand to save the man. By early 2026, Chappelle's disappearance is viewed as the most successful comeback story in entertainment history. His return via massive Netflix specials transformed him from a sketch comedy star into a philosopher king of the stage. However, even in his resurgence, he remains a figure who vanishes periodically, retreating from the public eye whenever the cultural conversation becomes too toxic or restrictive. His legacy is the lesson that no is the most powerful word an artist can say. Dave Chappelle didn't just disappear. He proved that true power isn't about being seen. It's about having the freedom to choose when you want to be heard. Brandon Hammond. The disappearance of Brandon Hammond from the Hollywood landscape is one of the most quiet and dignified exits of a child star in cinematic history. During the mid to late 1990s, Hammond was the emotional heart of Black cinema. With his wasp expressive eyes and a soulfulness that seemed to predate his years, he delivered a legendary performance as Ahmad in the 1997 classic Soul Food. He wasn't just a child actor playing a part, he was the narrator of a culture, the glue that held a fractured movie family together. His resume from that era reads like a greatest hits of 90s urban media, including roles in Waiting to Exhale, Space Jam, and the television series The Gregory Hines Show. However, Hammond's vanishing act was a gradual and intentional pivot toward a life behind the lens and away from the scrutiny of the public eye. As he entered his late teens, he faced the difficult transition that claims many child stars, but rather than fighting for scraps of fame or falling into the industry's darker traps, Hammond chose a path of creative evolution. He realized early on that his true interest lay in the mechanics of storytelling rather than the vanity of performance. He effectively disappeared from the A-list social circuit to study film, eventually transitioning into writing and directing his own independent projects. He traded being a face for being a voice, reclaiming his identity from an industry that often tries to keep child stars frozen in time. By early 2026, Brandon Hammond represents a victory of autonomy. He is a rare example of a child actor who transitioned into a healthy, productive adulthood by choosing privacy over visibility. While fans still post clips of his iconic Big Mama speech from Soul Food, Hammond himself lives a grounded life, occasionally sharing insights into his journey as a filmmaker through curated social media presence, but otherwise maintaining a fortress of privacy. He didn't vanish because he was forgotten. He vanished because he grew up and decided that the most important story he could tell was his own, lived on his own terms. Brandon Hammond remains a beloved figure of nostalgia, a reminder that sometimes the best way to honor a legendary childhood is to build an even better, quieter adulthood. The career of Brandon Hammond exemplifies a rare, dignified exit from the Hollywood machine. After anchoring iconic 90s films like Soul Food with profound emotional intelligence, he performed a strategic vanishing act to reclaim his autonomy. By trading the spotlight for behind-the-scenes filmmaking, Hammond refused to become another cautionary tale of the child star system. However, this raises a provocative question for the fans of Black excellence legends. Is the ultimate form of success for a Black artist stay invisible to inspire the masses? Or is it the power to walk away and define excellence entirely on one's own terms?